Officer, and I understand the corporate body have announced that an investigation is going to be launched into the Health Secretary's expense claims. And while that investigation is welcome, the Health Secretary still needs to come forward to this Parliament to give full answers, and the First Minister must give us frank responses today. So, for a moment, let's set aside the doubts about Michael Matheson's latest story on how he racked up a massive bill on his phone while on holiday. If we believe the unbelievable, if we suspend our disbelief, if we assume this fable is true just for 1 minute, it still doesn't explain why, back in February, Michael Matheson claimed £11,000 of taxpayers' money for a bill he couldn't account for. He promised Parliament, he gave written assurances this bill was the result of constituency work and only constituency work. His new version of events proves beyond doubt that that claim was false. The First Minister said this was a legitimate expense. Does he still believe that?
First Minister.
Well, let's remember, of course, the fact that when Michael Matheson discovered, after speaking again to his family, to his teenage boys, after it was told to him the use of the iPad, which Michael Matheson, of course, laid out in full in a personal statement last week, Michael took the immediate decision to pay back the full amount. Michael Matheson has made mistakes in the handling of this issue. That is something that he has admitted to, in what I thought was a very emotional statement to this chamber. He gave the reasons why, because he wanted to protect his teenage boys from, frankly, the harsh political and public scrutiny that often comes with the roles that we occupy. But on discovering from his teenage boys what had happened, he agreed to immediately pay back the full amount. Let me read a quote from an STV interview. "I'm sorry, it was a big mistake. It's something that shouldn't have happened, but I am ultimately the only person responsible for that. This was a big mistake by me, for which I'm deeply sorry. I know how badly I've performed here and how much I've let people down. And for that, I'm very sorry. Forgive me, this was a quote from Douglas Ross when he failed to declare £28,000 of income, presiding officer. Now, the point here is that we didn't call for Douglas Ross to quit. We accepted, of course, the point that he had made an honest mistake. And the hypocrisy here, presiding officer, that people will see through is that Douglas Ross says it's fine for him to make an honest mistake, but not fine for Michael Matheson to make an honest mistake. So we will not get distracted by Douglas Ross's political opportunism. The Health Secretary is getting on with the job of ensuring that a health service recovers through what will be a difficult winter, presiding officer.
To require briefer questions and responses, Douglas Ross.
Thank you, presiding officer. Let's be very clear. My apology, which was full and frank, was about not declaring something. Michael Matheson tried to dupe the taxpayer out of £11,000. £11,000 he wanted the taxpayer to pay. And isn't that the reason why the First Minister couldn't answer my question? And since he didn't, let's put it there again. The First Minister previously said it was a legitimate expense claim. Does he still believe that? Because Michael Matheson did claim that £11,000 from the taxpayer and promised Parliament it was for constituency work. But his story has changed. Now we're supposed to believe that he didn't understand why he had been billed so much, that he was clueless. Michael Matheson supposedly didn't know anything about it, but he was certain it was the taxpayers' problem and their bill to pay. So, First Minister, if he had no idea what the bill was for, why on earth did he claim taxpayers to pay it?
First Minister.
First, the motivations for Michael's actions last week, before his personal statement. I'm not sure why I'm told.
First Minister, can I ask you to resume your seat? Mr Ross, Mr Swinney, I would expect better behaviour from both of you. We need to hear the answers from the First Minister. We need to hear the questions as well. First Minister, please resume.
Well, they clearly don't want to hear the answers. That is the exact point. You can hear. They really don't want to hear the answers, Presiding Officer. Again, Michael Matheson, in what I would say it was a very emotional personal statement to this chamber, laid out in full detail the handling of the issue in relation to the expenses in relation to his iPad. And he was clear that he should have handled it better. I agree with that. He, of course, on discovery of the fact that his iPad had been used by his teenage boys, agreed immediately to pay back the full amount. Now, look, as a father of 2 children, including a teenager myself, I can understand the motivation to protect your family, but I agree with others in this chamber that it should not have been handled in this way, and Michael Matheson, of course, admitted to that. Now, what Michael Matheson, after making that personal statement, has been getting on with is the job of Health Secretary. That's why on Monday he chaired Forth Valley's annual review. That's why this week he's announced £42 million for an extra 153 doctor training places, the largest expansion on record. It's why he visited Glasgow Caledonian University's School for Life and Health Sciences. It's why he met this week the Royal College of Nursing. Because as much as Douglas Ross, as much as the Conservatives want to distract him, what I've got is a Health Secretary that's getting on with the job.
I am going to have to require briefer questions and responses. Douglas Ross.
We've got a Health Secretary who claimed £11,000 from the taxpayer and a First Minister who won't simply answer, was that a legitimate claim to make or not? Michael Matheson is taking the public for fools. He supposedly found out on Thursday, 2 weeks ago, what really happened. He apparently learned at that stage that there was personal use of the iPad and other people had incurred the data costs. But the following Monday, Michael Matheson was asked point blank if there was any personal use of the iPad. He said no. He was asked directly if anyone else had used it. He said no. First Minister, was the Health Secretary telling the truth when he gave those answers?
First Minister.
Again, I will say for the third time, Michael Matheson accepts and admits and admitted to this chamber that he made mistakes in the handling. And Douglas Ross is shouting to me, why? Michael Matheson once again addressed that because he did what he did to protect his teenage boys. Did he make mistakes? Absolutely. Has he admitted that? Absolutely. Has he agreed to pay back the full amount? Absolutely. And isn't it telling, Presiding Officer, that Douglas Ross wants to talk about the Health Secretary? What he doesn't want to talk about is the savage cuts the UK government have unleashed on the health service through yesterday's autumn statement. Let me read. If you want to listen to those in the health service, Presiding Officer, let's hear from the RCN's chief nurse, Professor Nicola Ranger. She said the autumn statement is short-sighted, that the NHS faces a multi-billion-pound deficit. They don't want to hear from nurses, Presiding Officer. They want to try to distract. They want to try to deflect. They want to try to dodge away from the fact that their autumn statement has led to savage cuts to the health service. Well, we won't let them forget, Presiding Officer.
The only person deflecting here is Humza Yousaf, who cannot give honest answers. And if everything to do with Michael Matheson was an honest mistake, why have there been so many dishonest statements about it? And while Michael Matheson's story has unravelled, Humza Yousaf himself has been caught up in it. He was told by Michael Matheson last Tuesday what actually happened and the personal use. But the following day, last Wednesday, Humza Yousaf told the press and the public, and I quote, "For me, the matter is now closed." He continued that Michael Matheson had, and this is a quote from the First Minister, taken the decision given the honest mistake that has been made in relation to the updating of the SIM card. And he stuck to the same story that he knew was false. And this morning, the Deputy First Minister was further embroiled into this scandal. She was asked if, on a point of principle, ministers in the Scottish Government always tell the Parliament and the public the truth. She refused to answer that question. So let me ask Humza Yousaf, if government ministers need to be honest, why is Michael Matheson still in a job?
First Minister.
I will say for the fourth time that Michael Matheson admits to making mistakes in the handling of this issue. And it is astonishing that Douglas Ross thinks that the party of Boris Johnson, a man that Douglas Ross described as honest, can lecture anybody about standards in public life, presiding officer. Isn't it really telling here that we have a corporate body that has said today, just before First Minister's questions, and I will quote directly from them, that in the interest of fairness to all and to avoid prejudicing its investigation, the SPCB will, as of now, not comment on any matters that could be a bearing on this process or provide a running commentary. I think it's right that we let the SPCB get on with the job that it's got to do, and Michael Matheson will get on with the job of ensuring he supports the health service through what will be a difficult winter.